Welcome into Outkick the Show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you had spectacular weekends. I hope you continue to respect the picks because we had another winning weekend. We are now sitting at 8-5, making everybody filthy rich who respects the picks. We've got a lot to get to today, lots of reaction in the NFL and in college football. I want to tell you off the jump. Go check out sportsbookreview.com right now. Make sure you get the best possible numbers for college football and the NFL. All the lines are out for college football week 6 and NFL week 5. We are off and running at the new week. Lock It In will be on here in a little bit. Already knocked off radio, already knocked off the starting 11. Off the jump here, before I get going any further, got to tell you, I'm doing a signing on Wednesday. Wednesday, unless they cancel with me. I'm doing a signing on Wednesday at the West End Barnes & Noble at Vanderbilt. The West End Barnes & Noble right there on West End Avenue, the big Barnes & Noble there at 7 p.m. So unless they cancel with me, we'll do that at 7 p.m. Question for you in general. I can't believe sometimes the ridiculousness that happens in my world. I'm going to be down at the beach right now is the plan, down on 30A in Rosemary for Owners Weekend this weekend. And I'm supposed to be doing a book signing in Rosemary, and I was also going to do a book signing on Sunday at Seaside. A lot of you have ever been down to the beach in Seaside, Florida. There is a bookstore right there called Sundog Books. I've bought a lot of books over the years there. While I wait to eat at the Great Southern, while my kids are running around watching a movie there. And I was in disbelief today because they agreed to host me for a signing on Sunday. And then the owner of the bookstore called and said, because he didn't agree with my opinions in the book, even though he hadn't read the book, he was canceling the event. Now, he has the right to do whatever he wants. It's his business. But what kind of world are we living in right now where owners of independent bookstores get so triggered by the idea that someone might have a different opinion than they do that they cancel a public book signing? It's not like they're paying me anything. This is only profitable for them. The only reason I would do it is to be able to go see people and have them come get an autographed copy of my book. I make no money from doing this. This is just entirely me gifting to that bookstore my presence and probably thousands of dollars in additional book sales for them from my book. Because over the course of, it's easy. Over the course of the next month, if I sign a bunch of books for him, first of all, there might be 100 people who show up and buy my book that day. That wouldn't stun me because there's going to be a big crowd of people down on the beach there. It wouldn't stun me if 100 people show up. That's thousands of dollars in revenue for his independent bookstore. He's basically getting me there 100% for free. I'm giving him my labor for free. And so if he had decided he didn't want to host my event, I would have perfectly understood. There might be other events going on. It might be that he doesn't want to have an author that day. There are lots of reasons he could have made up. But instead, he flat out said that the reason why he wouldn't host a book signing for me, despite the fact that he had not read my book, was because he disagreed with some of my opinions. I should say I'm in disbelief, but this is the world we live in now, where everything has to be political. Where it is impossible for you to step into a bookstore and just go buy something without having to think about politics. And unbelievably, he has actually proven the underlying thesis of my book, which is there are places in American life where politics should not be front of mind. This was my same argument that I made against Nike. Nike should try to appeal to everyone instead of slicing and dicing up the population and deciding you don't care about everyone. I think it's insanely dumb of Nike. I think it's dumb of a bookstore. I don't know why, in particular, for a bookstore, which exists to allow creative thought and to experience and expose people to ways of thinking that they might not have otherwise been exposed to. That's really the purpose of a book in general. And here is my book, by the way. That's really the entire purpose of a book. Whether you agree or disagree with a book, the idea is you open this up, you challenge your mind with ideas that you may not agree with or that you may even disagree with, and emerge stronger by having considered a wider range of opinions. This book talks about a lot of things that other people are unwilling to talk about. It's why it's selling so many copies right now. It shouldn't be considered remotely offensive. Yet an independent bookstore is so triggered by what is said, evidently, or even what suggests from this cover, that they will not allow it to take place in their venue. I think it's crazy. I think it's crazy that an independent bookstore, not to mention an independent bookstore on 30A, where I would imagine the vast majority of the people who are buying things in that business are actually Republican voters. If you've ever been down and looked at the voting rolls for what happens in the panhandle of Florida, that's one of the most reliable areas for Republican voting in the entire country. So this idiot opens a bookstore and then refuses to allow people who consume and keep his bookstore open to be exposed to ideas that he personally doesn't agree with. It's unbelievable to me. 30A and all of South Walton County is a Republican hotbed. So are the people who come down to Seaside and own homes there. So are the people who own homes in Rosemary. You can vote any way you want. I just find it to be particularly troubling that a bookstore would agree to host me and then cancel me based on my opinions. It's wild to me. This is the world that we live in right now. I don't think it's healthy. I don't think it's good. I don't think it makes sense in any way imaginable. Okay, so let's get into NFL and college football. Anyway, that is Sundog Books. They have canceled my event, so if you were going to be in the Seaside area and you were hoping to come by and get an autographed copy of my book, then you don't have that opportunity in Seaside anymore because the owner of that bookstore has decreed my opinions to be unacceptable, and he will not allow me to be involved in any way with him. All right, let's talk about NFL and college football reactions. I was at Penn State, Ohio State over the weekend. I was in Happy Valley. I flew up on Saturday, spent all day yesterday at the airport because the flight got delayed like 5 hours coming back from Pittsburgh. I got to tell you, it was a phenomenal experience. It was an outstanding environment. Penn State had that game won. And then there was a 47-yard touchdown catch that I think threw a moment of doubt in their heads, and then they ended up running a bad play on 4th and 5. Now, here is why I typically don't focus on one decision, right? I talk a lot about overall game. I understand it's sexy to be like, oh my God, what was Penn State thinking with that play? They were in that position because of a series of poor plays they had made after they got up to 26-14. So I don't tend to focus on that. To me, if I could go back and change any play, if I were a Penn State fan, it would be the 47-yard touchdown catch where Dwayne Haskins threw it so poorly that the catch that was made by Benjamin Victor, I believe it was such an improbable and excellent catch that it threw off the Penn State defenders, and they weren't able to react to it. And then he made a spectacular individual play to run that in for a touchdown. Because I think that touchdown being scored so quickly fundamentally altered the game. If I could change a second play, it would be the penalty that Trace McSorley got on the drive before the final drive when he was scrambling and decided to throw the ball down the field, and he had crossed the line of scrimmage, and then they called offensive pass interference on Penn State. If McSorley doesn't decide to throw it there and just decides to keep running, he probably gets 7 or 8 yards there, and he's facing a 2nd and 2, and the clock continues to run, and the odds are that Penn State is in a position potentially to kick a field goal there instead of getting stopped. I thought Trace McSorley was extraordinary. The other thing is, when you run that play, the idea, I think, beyond a shadow of a doubt, is you are going to pop it because the expectation is that McSorley is going to do something. Now, if I were making the play call in general, what would I have wanted to do there? I would have wanted to roll McSorley out and give him an option to either run or throw. That would have been my decision because he was so deadly both throwing and running the football against Ohio State. I think he posted like 466 total yards, both running and throwing the football. But I don't like to go to the final play and be like, hey, if something had happened here, if the play call had been different, then everything would have been different. There were a lot of plays that I disagreed with in terms of the outcome for Penn State that you would focus on, I think, before the final play on the 4th and 5 situation there. So to me, I think this is intriguing in general as all of this plays out. Okay, Happy Valley was phenomenal. It was a great environment. The whiteout scene, it was a wild, like crazy wild scene. I think Penn State was utterly close, so close yet again to make a play there. It was pretty outstanding. Now let's talk about the game of the weekend from my perspective. I am in love with Mike Vrabel. There has not been somebody that I was in love with as a coach of one of my teams since Bruce Pearl. I loved everything about Bruce Pearl. I trusted him implicitly. The moment that he arrived in Knoxville, everything changed with the University of Tennessee basketball. I continue to believe that Bruce Pearl was treated very unfairly by the NCAA because he was caught lying about a secondary violation. Tennessee set him up for failure there. That was a complete failure by the University of Tennessee. If they had not managed that situation better, then I think Bruce Pearl would still be coaching at Tennessee. Now, the end result is Rick Barnes is at Tennessee, and Tennessee's going to be a top 5 to 10 caliber basketball team this year, and the recruiting classes are going really well, and the end result is Tennessee is doing fine as a basketball program. But the way I felt about Bruce Pearl was that he could do no wrong because he came in and took over a floundering program and turned it immediately relevant. I feel the same way about Mike Vrabel. One of the things you could see about Bruce Pearl early on was that the team loved him. Everybody loved Bruce Pearl. You could see it in the way the team celebrated, and now you see the same thing about Mike Vrabel. I loved the decision not to go for a 49 or 50-yard field goal for the tie against the Super Bowl defending champs, Philadelphia Eagles. I loved the decision to put the ball in Marcus Mariota's hands and let him go to work. I get a lot of criticism on social media regularly for being a big Marcus Mariota guy. I have seen how good Marcus Mariota can be. I believe in him implicitly. I think the Titans coaching staff has not been very good surrounding him. And yesterday, even with still issues in his throwing hand, Mariota went for nearly 350 yards passing. He didn't throw an incompletion in the entire second half. He completed 15 straight balls between the second half and overtime, and he made the play with Corey Davis finally starting to look like what the Titans drafted him to be, which is a game-changing wide receiver. Corey Davis went up in the air, made that catch. He was the number 5 overall pick. He was never really healthy last year. I told you guys to go back and watch one of these shows that Corey Davis would be a good late-round pick for many of you in fantasy because I think he was going to explode this year as long as he stays healthy, particularly now with Delaney Walker out for the season. I love everything about what the Titans are capable of. I think they're going to go on the road this weekend and win against the Bills. That'll get them to 4-1 and put them into an incredibly interesting position down the stretch. Now, here's something else that's worth thinking about. I love the way this breaks down oftentimes. Have you guys looked at why the NFL is so entertaining every year? It's because the NFL teams that arise are oftentimes totally unexpected. Here's a great stat for you. Right now, if the season ended, we are through 4 weeks. Neither the New England Patriots nor the Pittsburgh Steelers would be in the playoffs. Do you know when the last time that happened was? 2000 was the last time neither the Steelers nor the Patriots were in the postseason. And here are right now your division champs a quarter of the way through the season. We don't know one because we got the Chiefs going up on the road against the Broncos tonight. But otherwise, we've got the Miami Dolphins at 3-1 leading the AFC East. And I know they got their asses kicked by the Patriots this weekend. We've got the Cincinnati Bengals at 3-1, tied with Baltimore at the top, but the Bengals get the tiebreak. We've got, and by the way, the lights that are flashing over here are the big television lights that I've got set up to be on my new television show, Lock It In, at 4:30 Eastern. I mean, it's an unbelievable explosion of lights here. If you haven't seen it, it is insanely bright. So if you're watching this right now on Facebook or on Twitter, and you see me in the corner suddenly going from dark to light again with all these lights, it's the lights coming on in my studio here. Titans are 3-1. Jacksonville is tied at 3-1. The Titans would be the top seed there, would win the AFC South. We don't know because Kansas City's going on the road against Denver. Washington would be winning the East. They had a bye week, so they're sitting at 2-1. Chicago Bears would win the NFC North. New Orleans would win the NFC South, and the NFC West would be won by the Rams. Almost all of those, 7 of those divisions look like they're going to be races down the stretch. I love everything about how competitive the NFL is. All right, college football. What did we learn? I've got my top 10. I want to run through my top 10, then I'll take some of your questions on what you think of the college football and of the college football weekend, and I'll talk about what I think is a disaster going on right now in Tampa Bay with FitzMagic being replaced. Let me go ahead and talk about that actually for a minute. Ryan Fitzpatrick, through 3 games, becomes the first quarterback to ever throw for 400 or more yards. He has a bad half, and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers bench him. Jameis Winston comes in and throws 2 interceptions. This doesn't make any sense to me at all. This doesn't make any sense to me at all for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to immediately go back to Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston's not very good. To decide that you only allow Ryan Fitzpatrick to have one bad half, meanwhile, while your defense is giving up 6 touchdown passes to Mitch Trubisky. That's like getting dunked on 28 consecutive times by Luke Longley. It shouldn't happen no matter what. There's no way defensible to allow 6 touchdown catches for that to happen. I don't get it. I don't understand how the decision is made. This is an utter disaster to me. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, think about this for a minute. 63 minutes of football ago. That's all it was. Ryan Fitzpatrick was taking the ball on Monday Night Football with a chance to drive the field and lead the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to a 3-0 start. They go 3 straight incompletions, make what I think was the wrong decision to punt, don't get the ball back, and then go on the road against Chicago in a short week and get drilled. It doesn't make any sense to me that you would go back to Jameis Winston. And if you want to get ESPN left-wingers into a convoluted ball of absurdity, can you imagine if a black quarterback had come out and put up the 3 greatest passing weeks in the history of the NFL, and then he had one bad half and he got benched? Can you imagine how many racism allegations would be flying across the social media stratosphere? Think about that for a minute with me. If a black quarterback had stepped in for a white starter and had gone for over 400 yards in 3 straight games, something that has never happened before in the history of athletics in the NFL, and had been benched after one half for a white quarterback who was coming off a sexual assault suspension, can you imagine how crazy the race-baiting losers at ESPN would go? Think about that for a minute. You have the best 3-game stretch in the history of the NFL by Ryan Fitzpatrick. He plays one bad half and gets benched for a guy who was suspended for sexual assault. The internets would be feverish if that was a black quarterback being benched for a white quarterback coming back to start. Tell me how crazy the internet would be going. The race-baiting losers at ESPN would be playing the race card faster than you can even draw it. Ryan Fitzpatrick gets replaced by Jameis Winston, who's suspended for sexual assault in this modern Me Too era, and nobody even blinks. The same people out there beating the drum saying Brett Kavanaugh can never be allowed to be a Supreme Court justice got no issues with Jameis Winston making millions of dollars to play quarterback, despite the fact that he may well have gotten away with rape at Florida State, and that he only had to serve a 3-game suspension for sexual assault once he's gotten to the NFL. I mean, I'm just laying it out there. This is why, by the way, I think racial arguments are often wrong. There is typically always a reason other than race which determines why a decision is being made. I think this happens to be just a bad decision. Why are they doing it? I think they're doing it because they're trying to figure out whether they're going to invest $20 million in Jameis Winston next year. I think there's pressure from up top to figure out whether or not Jameis Winston is the future of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if they continue to play Ryan Fitzpatrick, who is 35 or 36 years old, they don't know what to do. They don't know the decision that they need to make because there won't be enough evidence of whether Jameis Winston is the right guy or not. So I think that's really why the decision is being made. It's a financial one as opposed to a justified by on-the-field football results. But if this were any other race, if Jameis Winston were a white guy coming back getting paid $20 million to replace a black guy who had just posted the 3 best games in the history of the NFL, everybody would immediately play the race card. Everybody. My argument against playing race is that the NFL, by and large, is a meritocracy. And we don't need to bring in external political factors to try to justify why decisions are being made, because usually there is a financial or competitive reason by which the decision is being made. For instance, money plays. And money right now is on Jameis Winston's side, and the Bucs have to decide whether or not they are going to pay him $20 million going forward. And I don't think they have a good sense of what the answer is going to be. All right. I got to tell you, here is my Outkick National Top 10. Here is my Outkick National Top 10 in reverse order. In the 10th spot, I've got Penn State. In the 9th spot, I've got Washington. As I continue, always note this. I don't start off with a preseason ranking and then spend the rest of the year trying to justify what I thought I was going to see before the season started. In other words, I start off fresh, brand new, no pre-existing idea of what's going to happen, and then I judge only based on the field. So in the 10th spot, I got Penn State. In the 9th spot, I've got the Washington Huskies. 8th overall, I've got West Virginia. I don't know how good West Virginia is. I will tell you this. For everybody out there who played our parlay, how much did it suck for our parlay to get blown up based on a touchdown with Texas Tech with 38 seconds to go? And also for a pick six to happen, we were sitting really pretty on the under hitting in Texas Tech, West Virginia. Our 4-game parlay would have hit with ease if they just hadn't thrown a pick six. The clock was ticking. West Virginia was in great shape. They were going to be able to run out the clock. That was a brutal beat. 7th spot, I've got Auburn. Auburn was not very good this week. I can't figure out the Tigers. They're pretty good defensively. I can't figure out why their offense hasn't gotten in gear yet. In the 6th spot, I've got the Oklahoma Sooners. In the 5th spot, Ohio State. And this is where people get triggered. Ohio State versus Notre Dame. I've got Notre Dame 4. Here's why I have Notre Dame 4. I think the combo of Notre Dame wins over Michigan and over Stanford is better than the combo of Ohio State wins over TCU and over Penn State. I believe that Stanford and Michigan is a better combo right now than I do TCU and Penn State. Plus, Notre Dame with Ian Book dominated Stanford on Saturday. Let's be honest. Ohio State was very, very, very fortunate to win that game. Maybe they shouldn't have won the game. I think for most people who watched it, Penn State was the better team for most of that game. So it's the only perspective I would put in there. Obviously, there's still much to be played. In the 3 spot, I have got LSU. At 2, I've got Georgia. At 1, I've got Alabama. Most underrated team nationally right now that should be getting more attention than they are, Kentucky Wildcats. How many FBS teams that have a top 25 win have won every game by double digits so far this year? There's 3. How many top 25 performances, top 25 teams that are undefeated have got at least every game that they've won by double digits? Alabama and Georgia are pretty easy. 3rd one, Kentucky Wildcats. Big 5 conferences with a top 25 win. Kentucky Wildcats, very underrated. Now, I'll give you an example. Clemson's not in my top 10. Clemson is not in my top 10. Why is Clemson not in my top 10? Because they haven't been very good. Because if Clemson were just starting this season and you looked at their resume, nobody could argue that Kentucky didn't deserve to be above Clemson based on what Kentucky has done so far this year. They've gone on the road and they've beaten Florida, who looks pretty good so far. They beat Mississippi State, and they beat South Carolina to start 3-0 in the SEC and get to 5-0 overall. I think Kentucky deserves a lot more so far than they have received. So that's my top 10. Here is my SEC power rankings 1 to 14, and then I will answer your questions. 14 spot Arkansas. Arkansas is awful. Tennessee is also awful. You know Tennessee's bad when you see that game and you think, you know what, Tennessee's not playing that bad, and they're down by 26 at the end of the game. They at least covered the spread. Vandy, I've got at 12. Vandy almost lost to TSU. That was an ugly, ugly performance for Derek Mason's team. Ole Miss, 11. Mississippi State, 10. None of these teams are very good. I don't think Mississippi State is very good. Mississippi State has scored, what's the math, 13 points in their past 2 games. Dan Mullen walking into Starkville and winning big, that was about as bad of a kick in the teeth as you can get if you're a Mississippi State fan. Mississippi State fans are like, we got the better coach, we're a better team with Joe Moorhead, and then you lost on the road by Kentucky by 21, and you posted one of the worst offensive performances we have seen in a very long time. I don't know what's going on with Nick Fitzpatrick. Reminds me a little bit of what we've seen with Khalil Tate, with Kevin Sumlin, where the new coaching staff comes in and they just don't seem to know how to use him. Dan Mullen got out of town. Then he came back into town. He's got a lot more money, and he kicked old Mississippi State's ass. 9, I've got South Carolina. That was an ass-kicking from Kentucky. Nothing fancy about it. Missouri, I've got at 8 overall. Texas A&M, 7. I've got Florida, 6. Kentucky, 5. Auburn, 4. LSU, 3. Georgia, 2. And Alabama, 1. All right, what questions do you guys have coming down the stretch here? I am in love with Marcus Mariota, with Mike Vrabel, and with everything rolling right now with my Titans. About as excited as I've been in a long, long time for the future of that franchise. If you're just hopping on now, I compared my excitement level to Bruce Pearl joining Tennessee. Yeah, I think the Titans are going to make the playoffs for sure. I'm responding to questions now on Facebook and Twitter. OU Texas, I'll give you my picks on Wednesday. The picks always go up on Wednesday. Appreciate all of you, by the way. We're over right now 60% winners through 5 weeks. 38 and 25 are the gambling picks. It has been pretty phenomenal. Here's my book. I'm doing an event again on Wednesday. Go to the Vanderbilt Barnes & Noble on West End, the one right on the corner of Vanderbilt's campus. 7 p.m. If you're in Nashville, you can go get a signed book. I'm going to be on 30A this weekend. I will be at the Hidden Lantern, the Rosemary Bookstore. The plan is for me to be there Saturday right around noon signing books. If you're going to be down on 30A, Rosemary Beach, would have been also at the other end of 30A at Sundog Books, but instead their owner canceled my event because he disagrees with my opinions. So that is going to be brutal. All the Barnes & Nobles have not closed up. They're supposed to have all my books in. I want to thank you guys as we go out on today's show. Again, this book, one of the top 10 best-selling nonfiction books in America for the past week. That's because of you guys. We've gotten almost no mainstream attention, no coverage on television. It's just me telling you guys, hey, I think you're going to like this book. It's an important read. Go get it. You guys have responded. It's been amazing. I don't think the Jimbo face mask grab is an issue at all. That was so overrated, overplayed. I wasn't on social media much Saturday. I can't believe that was a major story. Y'all know I've been very critical of Jimbo Fisher and the Jameis Winston relationship over the years and what he let him get away with. Jimbo Fisher did absolutely nothing wrong at all in that situation. I don't think that there's any doubt at all. I'll be doing a few book signings. I'll let you know. Follow me on Twitter at Clay Travis. I'll give you the update. But the one coming up Wednesday, 2 days from now, 7 p.m. in the main Barnes & Noble on West End Avenue, downtown Nashville, right by Vanderbilt University. I love all of you. Thank you for hanging with me. My name is Clay Travis. This has been Outkick the Show. We will continue every day right around 3 Eastern every day on here. You can also go download my podcast in the morning, 6 to 9 a.m. Eastern, and I will be live on FS1 with Lock It In 30 minutes from now. Kisses for you guys. I'll see you tomorrow.